Welcome to Transformation with Martine. Martine Emmons is a transformational life coach who broke free from childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and overcame cancer to become a powerful force of healing and hope for others. Martine describes traumatic events as fierce emotional tsunamis. They can leave impending doom and destructive tidal waves of emotions that hit you when you least expect it. Martine helps her clients dive into the depths of their trauma and pain as she stands fiercely advocating for them to shine a light on those experiences and find the lesson in the pain. She serves as a beacon of hope that guides you to see the strength, lessons, and purpose that can be born from the pain. You can feel alive with purpose again when you awaken your dormant strength, step into your power with a sense of peace, and discover a new wave of hope with the right tools and support. Martine and her guests are here shining their lights today through empowering stories of hardship and transformation to inspire you to find hope and to see that there is a beautiful blue ocean of serenity, happiness, and fulfillment in your future. Transformation with Martine starts now.
Welcome to Transformation with Martine, where we conquer everything and compromise nothing. Welcome back, everyone. I love my Fridays, as everybody knows. My show is My show is every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, for those of you that may not know. And for new listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. My guest today, we have known each other in different communities for years and just recently connected again. Welcome, Kristy. Sure.
Hi, Martine. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
I am so happy to see you. It has, I mean, we were connected a long time ago in a group called Infinite Receiving, which is pretty fun anyway, right? You know, just the idea of putting the good stuff out there in the universe and it comes back to you. So how have you been since our early days?
I feel like that was a completely different lifetime.
Uh-huh.
That was easily about 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I have shed so many identities in that period of time that I feel like I'm in a completely new life. I don't know if it's something about being in my 50s or if it's my particular life path, but things are kind of amazing.
Yeah, they are,
now.
right? Yeah. You know, I noticed that even since then, it's just really leaning into our own selves and the guidance that is there, because the wisdom is always there in every lesson, obstacle, adversity, loss, whatever it is, if we just take the time to tune in and, you know, find those blessings in the lessons. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody has, let me back up. I actually think that we're all here to heal in some way or another. We're all here to remember the truth of who we are, whatever that means for each of us. And that we're each going to have our own path. We're going to have our own challenges, and that in that experience, we will have multiple opportunities to probably revisit the same issues again and again. People talk about it like being a spiral journey, but I think it's sort of returning at a deeper level to some of the fundamental pieces that are probably part of the gift that we're supposed to be giving into the world in some form or another. And life is just going to keep polishing us until we are able to really allow the light to come through us. If that doesn't sound too like new agey and out there.
No, I get it. You know, it's something that unless you're in the world that we are, basically, it's kind of hard to understand the term of or phrase or whatever it is that's kind of out there right now. It's not so much becoming who we are meant to be; it's unbecoming, taking all those layers
or just remembering.
off.
Yeah. And I think that's why I feel so different. The last, like when I met you, I was really I was about to go through a pretty life-altering series of years that really took me completely away from what I thought I was supposed to be doing. It was like a massive descent.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was an unraveling. Like, I think that we need to be capable of deep unraveling and undoing in order to really remember the truth of who we are.
Right. Well, and what do you think it takes to be ready for that? I know that's big.
To be really honest, I think that you need to get to the point where you've suffered so much,
Mm-hmm.
and you've tried so many things that, and you've exhausted yourself in all of the trying, to the point where you are willing. Like, I really think that we awaken on our knees.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a sense, I think we need to be brought to our knees by
Mm-hmm.
what life is offering us and asking
Yeah.
of us.
Oh yeah.
And that we don't really want to suffer anymore, and that we will now do anything. I think we need to become willing to do the things that we've not been willing to do, let go of the things that we've been unwilling to let go of, walk
Mm-hmm.
away from the things that we didn't think that we could walk away
Yep.
from. Like, I think our freedom, emotional and spiritual freedom, the cost is very high, and most of us are just unwilling to pay that until we can't afford to not pay it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, until we can't stand it anymore, almost,
Yeah.
I get that. And, and another part of that, to me, my coach and I were just talking about this, just a couple of days ago, and, about opportunities that come in, and in your soul, oh yeah, it's exciting. This is cool, but I can't do it right now. My body is telling me, slow down. My body is saying, you know what? You're overwrought, you're overrun. And there's that part of you that's fighting, like, well, what if this doesn't come up again? And it's like surrendering to, oh, if it doesn't, maybe that isn't what was supposed to be for me anyway. Maybe those aren't my people. Maybe that isn't my opportunity. If it's like, oh God, if I don't, it's such a stronghold on me that we have to be willing to release that as well.
Yeah. I often have to remind myself that my good comes from so many more places than I can even conceive of, that my good is not limited to one client, to one opportunity, to to one relationship, to one moment in time, that my source will bring me my good in any number of ways that I actually probably won't even be able to conceive of. In fact, that's always been the case. That the things that have really fed me have come from places I could not possibly imagine.
Right. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Just how even just money, for example, where sometimes you're struggling, and then suddenly you get money from a place you can't even fathom. It's remarkable how things work, especially if you just kind of surrender and
Yeah.
So would you be willing to share a story of in your journey of when you knew things were starting to shift and change, what made you be like, okay?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of two little vignettes that I realize now actually are strung together. One was 6 years ago, as about the time that I met you, actually probably about this time of the year. I was at a retreat with an amazing female entrepreneur who taught women how to really live their truth and speak that and offer that through their work. And we were given an assignment over the weekend to take a walk through this beautiful redwood forest near her home, and to ask to be given a message from the earth, from the land, from our relationship to all of life, to ask what is ours to teach. And I wasn't really someone who at the time got messages from trees and birds. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, sure.
But it just wasn't how things came to me at that time. But I walked and came to a place where the woods kind of like led up to these sort of open pastures that were just this sort of golden brown in the Northern Californian fall.
Yeah.
And I saw this hawk out in the distance that was sort of like gliding on warm currents. It was sort of like swooping and gliding. And I watched it, and I kind of leaned back into this eucalyptus tree, and I instantly heard all of life exists in a state of self-reverence. And I immediately knew what it meant. I knew that it was beyond self-love, that like this is an unself-conscious state of remembering the truth of who we are and the pure bliss, joy, exuberance of being, without any thought about what that might mean for, you know, what we did in the world, or how it looked, or how good it was. And I also knew in the moment, like, there was no way that I could embody teaching that. Like, that might have been mine to teach, but I was like, I think you might have gotten the wrong woman at the retreat, because like, I don't think that that's mine.
Right.
And fast forward a couple of years, I got a diagnosis of a very sort of mysterious autoimmune condition. And the moment the doctor gave me the diagnosis, and she was like, you're going to have this the rest of your life, there's no cure, I heard immediately in my mind, I'm going to heal completely. I didn't know how, but it was the same voice that had told me years before what's mine to teach. And in that moment, I realized that to heal completely, I had to unlearn everything that I had known about doing or being or achieving anything. And that journey of healing the last 2 years has really taught me, like, what does it mean to be a woman who is not just able to love herself, but live in a state of self-reverence and remembrance of my truth.
I love that. I really love that. We're going to go to break in a moment, but I would love to talk more about that self-reverence. That's really like, I hear that word and it's just kind of like there's a quickening in me. Like, ooh, I resonate with that. That is really something, even though I wouldn't say like it's not my experience. It's not my, like I can't until I, how do I put this? Like, focus on that to be able to embody that word myself. Embodiment has taken me a while to understand. Yeah. I've been a coach for years and trained by, I think, some of the best people, but it wasn't in the recent years that I'm like, oh, I get what that means. It's like, it's got to be a whole part of your body, not just your training. It's your whole everything.
Body, heart, and mind.
Powerful. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we are going to take a break, everyone, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine. This is where we conquer everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is Kristy Schur, and we are talking about transformation and self-reverence. So Kristy, let's go into that. What we know, what most people know what self-love, self-care is to a certain extent, and it's way beyond like we were talking about bubble baths and pedicures. What is self-reverence?
Yeah. For me, I found self-love really challenging. And it was mysterious to me for a long time. It was frustrating, it was elusive. And I think a lot of people have that experience. Self-reverence for me, it has an aspect of really remembering myself as part of the fabric of life. Like actually having and you said this about like embodiment, like having the in my bones, like getting it in my body, the embodied remembering, like, oh, like in my day-to-day experience, in my moment-to-moment experience, when painful thoughts arise, when painful patterns that show up in relationships present themselves, remembering and actually being able to access the truth of like, oh wait, I am actually continuous with all of the energy in the universe. Like the cells in my body are actually continuous. They're contiguous with all of the energy that exists in the universe. I am part of the fabric of life. Like it's a way of, it's a kind of remembering that our belonging is never earned. it can never be taken from us. It's always accessible to us. So it's more than just like, you know, oh, I don't like look in the mirror and like, you know, criticize my body anymore. It's like, I can look in the mirror and remember, oh yeah, I was made exactly this way. This was on purpose. This was actually love speaking when it made me. And being able to live from that place, it changes our relationships with other people. It changes the nature of our work.
Yep.
It changes the message that comes through us, the message that wants to be lived through us and into the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It
I could probably
does.
go on and on.
No, and that's great. It makes me think of several things. I had an eating disorder from age 11 to, I don't know, most of my life. It was only recently that I tackled it, to be honest.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah, I remember. I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that, but
oh no, we can go there.
okay. Because mine, there was always like, I recently wrote a blog, which I haven't released yet, but it was about like thinness was the way it was supposed to be in my family, you know, and I remember going to the theater once and getting our seats with my mom. And and so I already grown up in this, but this was like when I was in my 20s or something. We decided to go to the movie. And even at that point, when I was probably about 22, we go in the theater, sit down, and this woman walks by that is larger. And my mom's like, oh my God, she's so fat. And I know the woman heard it, and I was mortified. And there was like, my dad told me, and my eating disorder started around age 11, because he says, you know, you got to get a handle on this. I really wasn't that. I mean, I could look at pictures. I was just a little chunky, but not anywhere big. And even if I was, right, he just said that no man's ever going to want you. We don't like stuff like that. And and that's kind of where it started. So it was like a love, but a hate through my life. And when I was about 21, and this was like really when the binge and purge was in there, that something came in my head that said, you really got to stop this, because you're never going to have kids. And there's nothing I wanted more than that. So that started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. So that stopped, like, you know, that thing, but I still went on to just loathing, like looking at myself, especially my hips, with disgust, too big, you know. And then once I had my first child, it was like, oh, wow, my body made this. My body made this. Still, though, you know, pregnancy weight, this kind of thing, back and forth. And it wasn't only to a few years ago, and maybe 2 actually, that I really got a handle when a health coach triggered me so bad that I thought, I have got to stop this. And I'm grateful that I really delved in, and I really worked with my coach like really hard at this, because in June I was diagnosed with vitiligo. And that's it's a tough one, because when you start seeing these little spots and stuff, especially on your face, but let alone, there's like a huge spot on my hips, which is where my trauma has always been, my hips. Yeah. And had I not done that, I don't think I would have done as well with the acceptance and the actual having compassion for my body, not being mad at my body for it. Yeah. Is your journey anywhere like that or similar?
Oh my God. I mean, there's just so many similarities. I mean, I probably started having, I started, my first diet was probably about the same age, around 11 or 12. I know that I had probably started using food for comfort in the years before that. And the thing is, like, part of my background is as an RN, I worked, here's the irony. This is like this is the way the universe works. I became a nurse in my 30s and my late 30s. And I really wanted to work with women and babies. So I became a perinatal nurse and went into working primarily as a lactation consultant inpatient. So I basically worked on feeding, and one of the things that I really learned as I observed hundreds of thousands, like probably tens of thousands of mothers over the course of my career, mothers and babies, is that that babies do more than, this is related, babies do more than just get calories when they're at the breast or a bottle, and I have no judgment about how a woman feeds her baby,
Right.
but, in the context of what I did, it's more than just getting calories at the breast. It's actually, I didn't actually learn this, there was actually evidence to this until much later, but I suspected very early on that there was a lot more going on than just getting their stomach full. And in fact, there actually is, at a physiological level, at a nervous system level, so our limbic system, at a social engagement level, we learn that love comes in connection, like love and feeding happen at the same time, that we get fed and we get love through connection with ideally a loving, grounded, present caregiver. And, early in my life, I experienced a lot of emotional trauma and rupture. And so for very many women who've experienced attachment wounds or injuries, attunement wounds or injuries with their caregivers, with their parents, food and body become places that are terribly fraught with a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And I mean, I just thought I was, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the F-bomb, but like,
You actually
I just thought I was effed up.
Yeah.
Cause like I swear like a sailor, I try not to, but like, I just thought I was fucked up with food.
Yeah.
Until, and my journey took a long time. Like I did not totally and completely heal until just several years ago. And now feel like I now actually identify as somebody who is like a normal eater. And I mean normal as in like my dog, that like when there's food in the bowl and he's hungry, he'll eat it. If he's not hungry, he won't. He's happy when it's something different and exciting. And, but that took me, and I'm 52, like that took me almost 4 decades of, and it wasn't like I was ignoring it. Like I've been a spiritual practitioner and seeker really my entire life, but finally making that connection between like learning how to meet my own needs. Like I didn't really even, like there was this moment. So I've had a lot of different, I've had a lot of different iterations of an eating disorder. And I sort of went into, I would say in sort of like I don't know, I think of it sort of like going to the intensive care unit. I entered a very strict 12-step program and learned so much. It completely turned my life around. But I was in a very strict, rigid 12-step program for food for about 8 or 9 years. And I did it like I did everything else perfectly. Like day one, perfect abstinence, straight through every single day for 8 years. But about midway through, I started to have this niggling feeling of like, I want to trust myself. And I did not know what that meant at the time. I just kept hearing this in the back of my head when I was meditating.
Yes.
And I started to have this awareness of like, if this 12-step program for food didn't exist, I would not know how to feed myself. And I didn't just mean like food, but the fact that I actually would not know how, and that it would actually bring up terror for me to have this question of how do I feed myself? It really showed me the depth to which a lot of women's and men's, but I only speak about women just because that's my experience. Like a lot of women's experiences around food and body are so tied up with what we learned about our lovability and the conditions under which we could actually get love.
That's so, I understand that so well. And it seems that, a lot of us seem to, when there's a common ground, we seem to come together. So I know a lot of women similar to us, that love and the trusting yourself is huge for me too. That was part of my healing, was collecting evidence, right? It's like, I can
say more about that. What do you mean by collecting evidence? I'm curious about that.
Like I learned to start trusting my body by collecting evidence. Like, I actually can have Thai food and not gain weight. I mean, and I can have an ice cream cone once in a while too. And even when I want to, like, I can have that.
Mhm.
And most of the time, I mean, I'm lucky I was raised in, I mean, not a healthy household, but health in regards to food provided. So I gravitate towards the vegetables and good food and lean meats and that kind of thing. I gravitate towards it. So I know how to balance things out, but evidence of, yeah, I can have Thai food. Yes, I can have an ice cream, and maybe I actually can go out to dinner twice this week, and I'm not going to gain anything. I started collecting that evidence and just watching, like, wow, okay, I can do this. And then you can kind of figure out a plan yourself without being in a 12-step program or anything else. We actually can trust ourselves if we trust ourselves. Yeah.
And for me, like more like I totally identify that. Like I had to actually go through very similar things when I was unrestricting foods. Because part of my healing was like unrestricting foods, stopping the food rules, judgments about food. But one of the things that I really had to decouple was, like, it became really clear to me that food and thinking about, like, can I have this? Can I eat that? That type of thinking was actually a smokescreen for a much deeper issue. Like it was, there's sort of like, you can kind of feel there's a quality of anxiety. Like, is this okay? Is this okay? Can I have this?
Oh, yeah.
And that was actually a distraction from a much deeper anxiety around, am I lovable?
Yeah.
Like, am I okay? Am I okay?
Yes. Oh, geez. We need to take a break, but I want to go into that a little bit more. That's really important, I know, for everybody listening right now who has had the challenge that we have. We'll be right back, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome back, everyone, to the place where we conquer everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is Kristy Schurer, and we're talking about transformation and most recently about eating disorders that we're both struggling with. And gosh, trusting ourselves, collecting evidence that we actually can eat stuff we want to eat and be healthy and well, and that there's a much bigger picture when we're thinking about food and what we can eat and what we can't. And really the big question is, am I actually okay? Did you ever sit in restaurants? I know that even though I know it's a good thing, when they started putting out calories and everything, sitting at a restaurant, I know it was probably 2 years ago, maybe a little less, and going to, I want to say, oh God, what is it? It's a real popular place, but I was sitting in there about tears, with my husband, and I didn't want, he's like, "Oh, you all right?" And I said, "No, it's like, there isn't a plate here that is under 1,300 calories, and I was just really stressing on it. He's like, "We can go somewhere else." And I'm like, "No, this isn't fair to him. This is not right." And I said, "It's okay. It'll be okay." And I really had to push through that discomfort and find a way to deal with that. And then, like I said, collect evidence and realize that I actually can do this. Was that another thing for you too? Like just going out or being in social places?
Sorry,
Oh, no, it's okay. Like, just being out or being at a social function or at a friend's house for dinner, or was that an issue for you too? Yeah.
There was a time when that was, when I left the sort of very rigid 12-step program, my intention was like, I want to learn to eat. Like, I want to learn to feed myself. I want to learn to eat intuitively.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple of years. It took me 4 years. Actually. The first 2 years, I experienced a lot of that. Like because I was still trying to control everything. Because for me, I don't want to speak to your experience, but for me, that sort of, like, I would perseverate on, like, can I have this many calories? I was still trying to control my food, and I was still really in and any kind of control is restriction. And so I was still trying to control my body. I was still trying to control what I ate. And So I was still in, like, I actually went from a 12-step program where I hadn't binged or purged in 8 years. And I went right back into binging and purging because trying to control, I didn't know this until later, but trying to control is restricting, and restricting is, restriction always ends in binging. It's just part of our physiology. It's part of it's how our brain actually protects us from experiencing famine. And so I went through a period of about 2 years where I experienced that. And then I had sort of a come to Jesus moment. I actually hired a coach who specializes in helping people get free of food issues. And she was like, look, you have to stop restricting. And I really didn't want to, because I was really attached to what my body looked like. I was really attached to thinness. Thinness was like safety. Thinness was like, like it was like this, it was the dam that was holding back the deluge of my unworthiness. And I worked with this coach for 6 months. I paid her a lot of money, and I lied to her the whole time, because she said one of the conditions of working with her was that someone was not in an active eating disorder. They could be overeating or binging. She actually doesn't use that term. Neither do I anymore. But she said, the only thing is, like, if you're purging, I won't work with you. And I lied to her the whole time until the very last day. And our very last call, I told her the truth, and she was like, look, you're sick. And it was like one of the lowest points of my life. I was by that time in a deep depression. I was nowhere near the self-reverence revelation that I'd had like a year and a half before. And I had to make the decision, did I want to get free? And honestly, I couldn't think of a reason why I wanted to stop controlling food, except that I could no longer handle the shame of knowing that I was hiding this behavior of, I was hiding this feeling of like, there's something shameful about me. So I actually went through a process that I had to create on my own, because I didn't really identify with the eating disorder community's sort of model of treatment. And I didn't really want to go back to 12 steps because that also didn't resonate for me. So I kind of created my own process, which was really looking at, sort of loosely based on the intuitive eating 10 sort of precepts, but really looking at each of the ways that I had used food, each of the behaviors, the restricting, the orthorexia, the calorie counting, the binging and purging, the binging, overeating. Like I looked at every single behavior, and I really broke it down. And I took each behavior and each rule that I had about food, like that I could only eat X, Y, or Z, or I couldn't eat at such and such a time. I could only eat, I looked at every one of those, and I basically stopped all restriction and had to really confront like what was actually present for me underneath those behaviors. Because they're sort of OCD behaviors, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But those behaviors actually keep us from encountering what is the deeper emotional fear, need, wound. And I knew if I was going to get free of an eating disorder and out of this depression, that I had to learn to really meet myself, really meet my needs. And so, I don't actually have any rules around food at all. And I don't really think about, I don't think about any food. Like I can have, there could be certain foods that like, they would be in my house that I actually couldn't have in my house. Like if they were in my house, I would have eaten them. And how I knew I healed was that like, I took certain foods, like I had a thing about like Hostess Ding Dong, like cupcakes, like they're like chocolate cupcakes with cream filled, whatever. And so as I was unrestricting them, I'd buy them every week. I'd have them every day. And in the unrestricting process that I kind of set up for myself of letting myself have as much as I wanted until my mind and my body were both like, I'm good. And usually the mind wants more than the body does.
Yes.
without judging it, without making myself wrong, without going down the rabbit hole of terror that I would have about what was going to happen to my body. I let myself have as much as I wanted. And really within a fairly short period of time, I did this with everything. Tortilla chips took me a little bit longer, but within a fairly short period of time, like I started realizing that I was buying cupcakes at the grocery store every week and they were just sitting in the back of my fridge. I mean, I actually had like some stale things and like a couple bins of cupcakes in the back of my fridge. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. I don't really want that anymore. In fact, maybe I don't even have a thing for that. And that process, you know, I saw the way that I could only very rigidly encounter the world. I could only allow myself to, I could not allow myself to have what I really wanted in food or in love. Like, I couldn't permit myself to need, like, that whole process of healing my relationship with food and healing how I encountered myself in terms of my needs and in the act of eating, it began to reveal why I was in a marriage that was so painful. It began to reveal my part in a marriage that felt lifeless, desireless, you know, in which I felt unwanted. Like, it began to show that it wasn't that I was just married to somebody who was emotionally withdrawn. I mean, I'm married to a wonderful man, but he was really emotionally withdrawn for a long time. I began to realize, like, oh wait, I'm really emotionally withdrawn.
Right. Oh yes. Oh yes. And
I think the metaphor of eating is a really potent one for so many women, because it is such a vulnerable thing to have a need and ask for it.
It is. Gosh, you know, I remember hearing somewhere in my early trainings, this is a long time ago, someone saying it's easier to ask to borrow $50 than to ask for a hug, or ask for any amount of money to borrow than it is for some love.
Right. Yeah. And I think that we get that, like, how we heal that is, it is multifactorial. Like, I had to work with a lot of my thoughts around, like, you know, all the judgments I had about how many tortilla chips it took me to feel full.
Right.
You know, like when I first started unrestricting tortilla chips, I would have to eat like 5 cereal bowls full. You know, and I have a deal with my husband that the only rule I had was that I would eat in plain view, like, you know, or with the intention of being in plain, no hiding. But you know, no other rules. And so I would sit at the dinner table and I would eat like bowl after bowl of tortilla chips without checking out. That was my other rules, that I would not go unconscious, that I would stay as conscious as I could.
Yes.
And that process of, like, involved the thoughts that I would have to hear myself thinking. If I didn't go unconscious, I would actually have to hear the thoughts I'm thinking, like, you disgusting pig, you're so gross. I'm like, whose thoughts are those? And I realized they're actually my mother's. My mother actually says that to herself every single day, still. Like, my mom is 80 in a couple of weeks. And I haven't seen her for a year, and she just arrived. She just came back to the town that she just moved back to the town that I live in. And I haven't seen her in over a year. And the first thing she said to me when I opened the car door, she said, "Your fat mother is here."
Oh my gosh. Oh.
And I was like, that's where I got it. And she may not even have ever said that out loud, but there's something about, like, her relationship with her body. I think we sort of absorbed this, like, whether or not there's something that's lovely or unlovely about my body. Like, I had to learn that I could eat 5 bowls of tortilla chips and still be lovely, be lovable. And my husband is, like, amazing. He's like, yeah, I love that you're eating 5 bowls of tortilla chips. He used to be like, that's great, enjoy them. And he'd always ask, did you enjoy it? So it started to change thinking. But I think that like, so there's the thinking, there's the emotions that come up around, like there's shame, there's self-consciousness, there's, like, I think there's the emotional level, but I think there's also the nervous system level. Like we can, we can be sort of, we can be conditioned by our experience to exist in sort of a default state of fight or flight. And it takes someone, helping us regulate ourselves in a painful experience and like be like, yeah, you're okay, and you're still okay, and you're still okay now.
Yes. Oh man. You're talking about your mom too. My mom's been gone since 2014. She passed away from dementia, but she was always pretty healthy. She had gotten into a car accident. I can't remember what year it was. That's kind of when her health started to decline, and that's when her mind started to go. But she was also very healthy, yoga, eating good food. But I do remember a few times, just a little kid, and I remember her like standing at the kitchen sink and just drinking a lot of water, like so she wouldn't eat. And I don't remember her saying it, but I knew. And then she told me one day that the secret to staying thin is to see hair swirled in your food. Right. That's sad. I mean, it's so sad. Food is supposed to be enjoyable. And I always thought like, So like what you're saying, like your mom was talking to you, it wasn't you feeling that way, you disgusting pig. It was her. It was the same thing with my mom, like being in my head, or my dad saying, no man's ever going to want you.
Right. Yeah. And I heard a similar thing. Like I was probably, I don't know, I was probably like 12 years old, and my dad told me I had fat ankles just like my mother. And they were divorced at the time. And so like I knew that he hated my mother, and that like that, and hearing that, like for years I would be like, I would dress so that my ankles didn't show. I mean, like those things, it's like, I don't think it's his fault. Like I know that he has his own wounding around love, and my mom had her own wounding around love. But it's like, do I want to carry this belief system in my body and suffer from it one more moment? And when I got this sort of like, you've got this autoimmune illness and you're never going to heal, and literally in my head got this, I'm going to heal completely. It was almost like my soul just went, talk to the hand, bitch, because I'm not as this. But like when I heard that, I started to also have the realization of like, you know what? I only have so much time left on this particular ride as this particular person. And I want to know what's possible. Like, I want to know, how free can I get? And one of the things that I don't want to spend my time around like another minute is hating my body, hurting myself with food, harming myself with my own thoughts.
Yes.
Those are optional, even like, and that can be hard when we're right in it and we're sort of deeply mired in these patternings that feel like they're not actually even under our control. Like I did not feel like my need to be thin was under my control.
Right.
But with work, it is. It just, like you said, sort of at the very beginning, it's an unraveling. It's an unbecoming that needs to happen. And that's scary.
Yeah. Taking off those layers that were put on us, it's not our mom's thoughts, our father's thoughts, or whatever. They're not ours, whether we're going to take them on or not. We can even go into like a different area of, say, money, for example. My dad has always said, never had it, never will. I'm like, nope. And right. And when you're saying about your illness too, like, and that is the same with me. When I got this vitiligo diagnosis, there is no cure for it, but there is for me. I've already decided that, and I've been doing treatments, and the pigment is definitely coming back in my skin. I can see it everywhere. Yes, it is possible. And it's like the whole evidence thing, right? My body healed of cancer. Why the hell can't I heal from this? Right.
And I think that it takes hearing other people. I mean, I think it takes hearing someone say like, this is totally possible. Like, I did this.
Yeah.
Like, when and the thing is, like, I think that there's a thing of a piece around grace, like with a capital G. Like, who knows? Like, I spent a lot of time in 12-step rooms, and like, who knows why someone gets sober? You know, like, why at some particular point someone sort of gets struck sober. And I really had sort of like, I got struck emotionally sober when I went into that 12-step program. And I actually really loved going to AA meetings as opposed to the food 12-step program, because I really identified with like this sort of spiritual, you know, desperation that a lot of alcoholics feel, because I was in so much misery. But like, I think that there's this piece around like, who knows why we have the experience that we do, like, that we have the awakening that when we do. But I didn't even choose the thought. Like, it came into my mind. I heard, it was like my voice, but not my voice, saying, I'm going to heal completely. And that precipitated, I mean, I'll just say, like, that precipitated so much transformation for me within the last 2 years, that like my marriage has completely transformed. My husband has completely transformed as a result of what happened within me, and how he actually began to feel something that he could not allow himself to feel until I actually could show up with that kind of love in my like in my being, as my being. And I think that these experiences, like, we have to hear that it's possible to start being able to dream into that for ourselves.
Oh, I love that. Vulnerability is everything. I know. I think about my marriage, and I think about, you know, we have a good marriage, but we do therapy. You know, it's to us essential. We need that mediator in there sometimes to help us understand each other. And he's always telling us, it's like, if you're not going to be vulnerable, yes, yeah, you may have some feedback you don't like, or whatever the case may be, but if you're never going to have that connection that you want. And we've really taken that to heart, both of us, that, all right, you may not like what I have to say, but, you know, it's so important that we are completely in and doing the work.
Vulnerability, I mean, to me, you know, vulnerability comes from the word vulnerare, which means to be woundable. So vulnerable means to be woundable.
Yeah.
And one of the things about vulnerability is that if we are not vulnerable, we actually can't be felt. Like, we're not feelable.
Right.
You know, so to actually be in a relationship where there's intimacy, which is actually, you know, there, we let ourselves be felt. If we can't really be vulnerable, our partner actually can't feel us.
Right.
And that's what we're in it for, is to feel, you know, like, to feel the other person's heart, right?
100%. This has been so good. And it's like the time flies, doesn't it?
Oh my God, it really did. Yeah.
Gosh. So, Kristy, tell me who you love to work with, and how can people find you in the last unfortunate minute?
People can find me on Facebook. That's the place where I do most of my writing.
Okay.
I work with women who are really wanting to find a home in themselves and to love themselves to their very edges, who want to know what's possible for them beyond self-love, what their relationships with their partners, their kids, what their work in the world can look like when they are rooted in the knowing of their own unimpeachable, never can be altered goodness.
I love that.
You know, to be able to like love, you know, like really dig on themselves.
Yeah.
So those are the women who work with me, who are willing to do the work of getting free.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much for your time today and spending time with me and hanging out. And I look forward to more of those times. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to the show. As a reminder, every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Transformation with Martine. Did listening today spark a sense of hope and possibility? Hold on to this feeling and tune in every second and fourth Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific for more inspiring conversations with Martine and her guests. They will show you there is hope, and you are right where you need to be. Martine is dedicated to supporting you right where you are while launching you towards promise, passion, and possibility that leads to the fulfilled life your heart aches for. If you're tired of being stuck, schedule a complimentary consultation with Martine and get on the exciting path towards the life you want to be living. Visit martineemmons.com and make your appointment today.